Hello class, this is my persuasive speech titled, Let's Fly the Friendly Skies. It is common to have a fear of flying. I had a customer that was preparing to go to Florida on vacation but did not want to fly. She was terrified by the idea. She had planned on driving until she realized how much of her vacation time she was going to lose just to make the drive. Not to mention, her friend also tried to tell her how much more dangerous it would be to take a long drive like that as compared to fly. Since her friend did not have the proper information to really help her get over her fear, she recommended that she come see me. I was happy to help her get over her fear by giving her some actual statistics and some ways to help put her mind at ease. Some of the ways I put her mind at ease was to explain the steps that are taken to make sure that the plane is in the best shape possible. I also told her about how the media only reports accidents that occur, but fail to tell her how uncommon they really are. If this sounds like you, then this information may be helpful to you as well. So let's get started. Did you know that people are 21 times more likely to get into an accident in their car on their way to the airport than they are actually on the flight they're about to take? Well, it's actually true. I'll break the numbers down for you. But to do that, we need to really be able to compare an apple to an apple. I'll put the number of fatalities that occur in a car compared to a plane in a similar format. The best way to do this is to compare the number of fatalities that occur per personal mile. In this case, actually about 2 billion miles. This comparison is computed by taking into account the amount of people in a vehicle and how many miles that vehicle travels. For example, a flight with 100 people in it that travels 1,000 miles would be equal to 100,000 personal miles. This is the same as if one person were to travel 100,000 miles in their car. Therefore, in a car, the statistics show that a little over 30 people, 30 3/4 to be exact, are fatally injured for every 2 billion personal miles traveled. In an airplane, around 1.5 to be exact, about 1.43 people are fatally injured in the same number of personal miles. With these numbers, it's easy to see that mile for mile, it's safer to fly than it is to drive. In case those numbers seemed a bit confusing, I can put them another way for you. If you were to add up all the miles that all the cars on Earth are traveling, every time that number reached 65 million, someone suffered a fatal injury. Conversely, only one fatality occurs when 1,400,000,000 miles are traveled by an airplane, using the same technique to get to that total. I'm sure there are many reasons why the number of fatalities in cars is a lot higher, but I would imagine that factors such as poor maintenance play a significant role, which actually leads me to my next topic. Planes are subject to much more rigorous maintenance than cars, and therefore are far less likely to have a failure. Many people don't take the maintenance of their cars very seriously. They just figure they can pull over if something goes wrong. Well, that's fine as long as the problem isn't something serious, such as a brake failure, for example. This carelessness is what leads to many accidents, some of which can be fatal. Even a simple engine failure could potentially cause a fatal accident. If your motor fails and you're unable to pull off the road safely, somebody could potentially hit you. Well, what does this all have to do with flying, you ask? Well, these are just a few examples of the things that could increase the likelihood of an automobile accident. When it comes to planes, pilots are required to inspect the plane before every flight. When was the last time you actually walked around your car to check the brakes, tires, lights, and all the components that actually allow you to maintain control of the car? Cars are only required to get very basic inspection once a year. Some states don't even require that. All of the maintenance that is necessary to keep a car in good running order is completed at the discretion of the car owner. Commercial aircraft are required to have regular service and inspections done by the FAA approved technicians, which have to document every little thing they do. In a car, when a manufacturer discovers a design flaw, they send a recall notice out to vehicle owners telling them to bring their vehicle into the local dealer for repair. Nothing stops a vehicle owner from continuing to drive the car until they get around to bringing it in for repair. But with planes, the aircraft is usually grounded until the repair can be made. This is easier to keep track of because of how regulated commercial air traffic actually is. When it comes to cars, the police that patrol the roads have no idea if the car you're driving has any recalls on it, and they can really do nothing to prevent you from continuing to drive it on safely. The only way the police would know if there is any issues with your car is if it's all over the news. Much like the one recall I'm sure we're all familiar with sticking accelerator. I don't want to name the manufacturer. The news, the media sensationalized that whole story. But even though there's nothing the police can do about it, it does bring me to my next topic, which is the media. I'm sure at some point or another you've heard the saying, no news is good news. This couldn't be more true when it comes to flying. It seems like when there's a plane crash, regardless of its severity, it makes headline news. The media sensationalizes every accident that occurs. For example, if you remember the Asiana Flight 214 that crashed while landing at San Francisco airport, looked really bad on the news. When the plane crashed, it was carrying 307 passengers, of which only 3 suffered fatal injuries. Any is no good, but only 3 out of 300. One of the 3 people that got killed, unfortunately, was killed by a rescue vehicle, not the actual plane crash itself, which doesn't make it okay, but just as a side note. In this example, that number equates to being only 1% of the people in the plane suffered a fatal injury. What the media leaves out in these stories is how many flights are actually conducted without incident between each of these accidents. For example, in 2014, there were around 34 million commercial flights conducted worldwide, and of those, only 7 were involved in a crash that resulted in a fatality. In fact, 2014 was an exceptional year. It was also the first year that the average number of daily flights went over 100,000. You'll never see this kind of information from the media. As you can see by these statistics, the odds are actually clearly in your favor. When it comes to flying, I can understand how many people are terrified by it. How some people are terrified by it. Each person has his or her own reason for why it makes them uncomfortable. The media can make it seem like there's an accident every other day. The mechanical problems we experience in our own cars can make us wonder, geez, are these sort of problems going to happen in the plane we're about to take on a trip? But the reality is many precautions are taken that make flying a lot safer than driving. If you still feel uncomfortable after hearing all this information, I'll suggest to you the same thing I suggested to the customer I mentioned earlier. Go take an introductory flight, or we actually do fear of flying flights, with an instructor at your local flight school. We can actually help you get over your fear by showing you how safe the planes actually are. I know that actually worked for her. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.